Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving into something a little spooky, a little nostalgic, and definitely worth revisiting, the Dead Meat Podcast episode 219, where James and Chelsea take on the 2003 horror flick Darkness Falls. This movie might not be the most celebrated entry in horror history, but it has a cult charm, a haunting urban legend at its center, and of course, that classic early 2000s horror atmosphere. In this review, we're going to break it down in a unique way. We'll look at the movie and the podcast itself almost as if we were reviewing a car, examining its exterior, interior, performance, safety features, unique selling points, the price you pay for it, and finally, we'll wrap up with a conclusion. So buckle up, because this ride is about to take us back to the days of tooth fairies, pitch black shadows, and jump scares galore. When we talk about the exterior of Darkness Falls, think of it as the first impression the movie makes: the look, the feel, the packaging. On the surface, this is a film dripping with early 2000s horror aesthetics. Lots of bloot, hinted cinematography, stormy nights, and flashes of CGI that, for its time, looked edgy but today might feel a little clunky. The design of the villain, Matilda Dixon the ghostly tooth fairy, stands out. She's cloaked, masked, and wrapped in shadow. The filmmakers leaned into a grim fairy tale vibe, and even if the execution isn't perfect, it's memorable. From the outside, this movie screams blockbuster horror attempt. Posters featured a ghostly, toothless face. The trailers promised audiences an urban legend come to life. And honestly, if you were a teenager in 2003, this exterior would have been more than enough to lure you into theaters. James and Chelsea point out how much the movie leaned into this high-concept premise. Everyone knows the Tooth Fairy, but what if she was a vengeful spirit? That's the glossy paint job, instantly recognizable, easy to market. And in terms of the podcast, the exterior is their tone. They approach the movie with their signature mix of humor and analysis, drawing you in with jokes, while also laying down solid info. So overall, the exterior is slick, intriguing, and screams scary fun, even if when you look closer, the details might not be as polished as you hoped. Step inside, and the interior is where things get interesting. The inside of Darkness Falls is a mix of comfort and clutter. At its heart, the story is about a boy named Kyle, who witnesses the horrific murder of his mother after encountering the Tooth Fairy, then grows up traumatized, only to return years later to face the same evil spirit, threatening his childhood crush and her younger brother. The setup has that classic horror interior design. Small town setting, local legend, childhood trauma, and a central villain that can only be beaten under specific conditions, in this case, staying in the light. The characters themselves, they're serviceable. Kyle as the reluctant hero, Caitlin as the love interest, and Michael as the vulnerable child. The dialogue sometimes feels wooden, like cheap leather seats in a car that looks good until you sit down. But here's where the podcast adds richness to the interior. James and Chelsea highlight both the goofy and surprisingly effective moments. They talk about how the film builds its mythology, how the Tooth Fairy's weakness to light makes for tense set pieces, and they laugh about some of the melodramatic acting choices. That balance of critique and humor makes the interior of this review experience more enjoyable than the film itself. So, while the interior of Darkness Falls might feel a bit dated, the Dead Meat Podcast fills it with personality, commentary, and warmth, almost like adding fuzzy seat covers to an otherwise plain ride. Now let's pop the hood and talk performance. How well does Darkness Falls actually run as a horror movie? Back in 2003, audiences gave it mixed reactions. At just 86 minutes, it's a quick ride. The pacing is brisk, you don't get long stretches of downtime. The scares come frequently, though many rely on loud noises and sudden shadows. The villain's rule: she can only get you in the dark, but you're safe in the light, give the movie a built-in engine for tension. Every scene has that push and pull between brightness and shadow. Performance-wise, this is clever design. However, the execution sometimes sputters. The CGI can be laughable today, and some of the scares feel predictable. James and Chelsea highlight this in the podcast. They point out that while the premise is strong, the delivery feels underpowered. It's like a car with a shiny turbo badge, but only a modest engine underneath. It gets you where you're going, but it doesn't blow you away. Still, the performance isn't all bad. The movie makes efficient use of its runtime, never overstays its welcome, and delivers a handful of effective jump scares. And on the podcast side, James and Chelsea's performance as hosts is stellar. Their chemistry, humor, and ability to dig into even flawed movies make the listening experience smooth and engaging, no matter what you think of the film itself. Now this one's fun. What are the safety features of Darkness Falls? Well, in a horror movie, safety usually means the rules that protect characters and keep the audience grounded. In this case, the biggest safety feature is light. Stay in the light and you're safe. Simple, easy to understand, and visually striking. It gives audiences a rule to cling to, which makes it scarier when characters inevitably break it. Another safety feature is the short runtime. You're not stuck too long. Even if you're not enjoying the film, it's over quickly, so in that sense, the movie protects your time. From the podcast perspective, the safety is James and Chelsea themselves. Even when discussing darker material, they keep things light-hearted and funny. Their jokes and banter make sure the audience never feels too bogged down, but just like in some cars, the safety isn't foolproof. Characters make dumb decisions, the rules aren't always consistent, and if you're not careful, the film might crash into cliché territory. Still, those stay in. The light moments do their job, and you end up appreciating the simplicity of that feature. Here's where Darkness Falls really tries to stand out. Its unique selling point is the concept of the Tooth Fairy as a horror villain. It's a genius elevator pitch. Everyone knows the Tooth Fairy, but no one's thought of her as a terrifying, vengeful ghost. That instant recognition gives the movie cultural staying power. The second USP is the atmosphere. Love it or hate it, the movie nails that early 2000s horror look. It's dark, moody, and stylized. For fans of that era, it's like stepping back in time. And third, the podcast's USP is how James and Chelsea approach movies like this. They don't just dunk on it, they find the fun, the charm, and even the accidental comedy. Their unique ability to balance critique with appreciation is why people tune in week after week. So while the movie's unique selling points might not hold up to scrutiny, the Tooth Fairy design looks a little dated now. The scares are formulaic, the core idea remains strong. And in the podcast, that idea gets the spotlight it deserves. What's the price of Darkness Falls? Not in dollars, but in what you give to watch it. Time-wise, it's short, so you don't lose much. Emotionally, you might feel some frustration at the clichés, but you also get nostalgia if you grew up in that era. The real price is that it doesn't quite live up to its concept. You pay for a great idea, but what you get is a decent, not exceptional, execution. It's like buying a car that looks sporty but drives just okay. On the podcast side, the price is nothing. You get entertainment, laughs, and insight for free. That's a great bargain. So, what's the final verdict on Darkness Falls and the Dead Meat Podcast episode 219? The movie itself is a mixed bag. Its exterior is sleek, with a killer concept and creepy poster art. The interior, the story, and characters feels a bit thin and dated. The performance is decent, with some strong pacing but weaker execution. Its safety features, the light rule and short runtime, keep it from crashing completely. The unique selling points, especially the Tooth Fairy villain, make it memorable, even if not legendary. The price you pay is low, a quick, fun, if flawed horror ride. But paired with the Dead Meat Podcast, the experience is transformed. James and Chelsea elevate the movie, making it more fun to revisit, laugh about, and even appreciate. Their analysis and chemistry turn a forgettable film into a worthwhile discussion. In the end, Darkness Falls might not be a 5-star vehicle, but with the Dead Meat crew as your co-pilots, it's a ride worth taking. Thanks for watching this review. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more deep dives into horror films, podcasts, and everything in between. And remember, stay in the light.